Like I mentioned earlier today, we are going to be turning to the book of John as we look and as we think about the 4th of July, as we think about our freedoms in this country, we are going to be thinking again about our freedom in Christ. And so we're going to turn to the book of John, and we're going to see what Jesus has here for us as he speaks to a group. He has just told this group, and he has been telling this group of who he is, and they are, of course, not completely understanding, and some even are trying to trap him. And just right before we get to the part of our passage we're going to be, he has just said that he is the light of the world. That he has just said that he is the light of life. That he has just said to these Jewish people that no longer do they have to hold on to their old system. No longer do they have to be stuck in their ways of sacrifice and their ways of doing these things. That he is the light that they see. That he has come to be the one that would set them free. That he has come to be the one that they need to look to. And so as we look here in John chapter 8, verse 31, and we're going to go through 47. But as we start here, verse 31, it just says actually in verse 30 that as he was saying that he was the light of the world and saying these things, that many believed him. And so in verse 31, Jesus says to the Jews that had believed him, he says, "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples." And so he's kind of setting up here that there are two things that these people need to do, that these Jewish believers now need to do. The first thing he says, "You believed in me." He says, if you have believed in him, then here are these other things. But the first they need to believe, they need to say that yes, that we are sinners, that yes, that we need saving, that yes, that we are not able to do that on our own. They believed that Jesus was the Messiah, that he was the chosen one come to give them freedom. He says, if you believe in me, that is good that you believe in me. That's the first step. And he says, then, what I need you to do then, if you abide in my word, then you are truly my disciples. He said, if you believed in the living word, which John says in the first chapter, that the word was God. We see that Jesus is the living word. He says, you believe in the living word, now also look and understand my word and see what I have given you and what I will teach you. And he says in verse 32, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And this verse maybe has been used out of context for different things in different ways, and people definitely have heard this verse before. Even those that are not believers have heard this being said before. But what's really being said here by Jesus is saying, look, if you believe in me, and you abide in my word, and you do what my word says, you will see the truth. You will know the truth. And that truth will set you free. It doesn't say that just to believe. It doesn't say that just hearing the word. But he says if you are truly following after the word, that truth will set you free. And they say, they answered him, we are offspring of Abraham, and we have never been enslaved to anyone. How is that? How is it that you say you will become free? They say, listen, we've never been enslaved to anyone. We've never been enslaved. We have been the chosen people. How can you say that we need to be free? And see, the problem they have here is they don't see what is enslaving them. They don't see what is actually holding them back. And Jesus will answer them here. He knows that they need to be made free. He knows that they are stuck, but they do not understand. And so often, those that we speak to, those that we try to tell of God's freedom, that we try to tell of Christ's redemption, of his freedom that he brings, say, well, I do not need to be free. I am already free. I'm free to be me, or free to be whoever I want to be, or free to be whatever it is that I want to do. And they say, I don't need your freedom because I am free. But Jesus answers them in verse 34. He says, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. And there's not one of us here that can say that we have not been one who has sinned. There's not one of us here that can say that we have lived a life without sin. The only one that can say that is the one that is speaking to us through this passage. He's the only one that can say that he is without sin. He is the only one that can say that he is not enslaved. Jesus says, truly I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. But he says then in verse 35, the slave does not remain in the house forever. The son remains forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. He says, yes, you are a slave to sin. Yes, you cannot go without sinning. Yes, you are not able on your own to be free from this sin. But he says the slave does not remain in the house forever. You are not stuck forever. The one that remains forever, the one that will continue on forever is the Son. And the Son, if the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. And this isn't a freedom to do things that we want. This isn't a freedom to be able to follow after things that we want to follow after. Instead, this is a real freedom. This is a true freedom. This is a freedom from sin, a freedom from death. This is the true freedom that we need. He says in verse 37, he continues, he says, I know that you are the offspring of Abraham, yet you seek to kill me, because my word finds no place in you. I speak of what I have seen with my father, and you do what you have heard from your father. Jesus is saying to them, look, you don't see this freedom. You are not truly this offspring of Abraham that you claim to be. You do not have the freedom that you think that you have. See, the Jewish people here are saying, we don't need freedom. We are the sons of Abraham. We are the chosen people. We have this already. And he says, look, no, if you truly were the offspring of Abraham, if you really did have this freedom, you would not seek to kill me. You would not seek to go against me. You would hear what I have to say, and you would take a hold of it, and you would grow with it, and you would learn with it. But he says, I speak of what I've seen from my father, and you, what you have heard from your father. And they think, okay, well, we're saying that we are the children of Abraham. We're saying that we are the ones that follow after Abraham. And Abraham, the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. But Jesus says to them, so they answer him, they say, Abraham is our father. They say, like I just said, they say that Abraham is the one that has gone before us. We follow after him, we look after him, we do these things that he has shown us, and we do these things that we are to do. And Jesus says to them, Jesus who is not afraid to speak truth, Jesus who has no option but to speak truth, says to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. And this is not what Abraham did. He says, look, you think that you know what you're doing. You think that you've got it all figured out. You think that you know where you need to go. But he says, look, if you really had it figured out, you would not be looking to kill me. You would not be looking to silence this truth. This truth that God has given away as salvation. This truth that Jesus is the answer. And they come back and he says, you are doing the works your father did. And they said to him, we are not born of sexual immorality. We have one Father, even God. And this here is somewhat of a dig there at Christ. We are not born of the sexual immorality. They're saying, well, maybe Joseph was your father. Maybe we've heard other things about you. And instead, what's true here is that Jesus is not of sexual immorality, and he is not of Joseph. He is of God. He is born of the Spirit. He is not one who is naturally born. He is one that has been sent. He is one that has been forever. He is one that has been around since before time began. He is one that will continue as life and time as we know it ends. They push back to him, and Jesus returns, and he says to them, if God were your Father, you would love me. For I came from God, and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. He says that he is here. He has come. He is there to give them this freedom. He is there to give them this truth. Not because of his own accord, but because God has sent him. Yet they long and they look to remove him, to kill him. And in verse 43 he says, why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. He says, why don't you understand what I'm saying? Why do you not hear this truth and know that it is true? Why do you not follow after God in this way that you should? He says, because you cannot bear to hear my words. You can't bear to change what you think you know. That the way that you have always done it, the way that you have always been taught, and the way that it has always seemed and the way that the world tells you that it is, you cannot get away from. You can't stand to hear what Jesus says and the truth that he brings. And we know and we see when we study who Jesus was and what Jesus said, that the truth that he brings is not always easy to hear. The truth that he brings is not always easy for us to process. The truth that he brings is not always easy for us to come to terms with. But he continues with them. He says, you cannot bear to hear my word. You cannot bear to hear these hard things. He says, you are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. And does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I tell you the truth, you do not believe it. He says, no, you aren't the children of Abraham. You aren't these children of God that you think that you are, because you're not following after what God has for you. You are standing on your own. You are making these things up on your own. You're speaking these lies. You are speaking out of the desires of the flesh. You're speaking out of the desires of the world. You are not looking to do what God has set before you. And I think if we look around us, we see that too often, that there are ones who would say that they are Christians, that there are ones who would say that they are followers of Christ with that name. The ones who do not look to speak the truth of Christ. Ones that do not look to follow after the truth of Christ. Ones that don't long to believe in him, yes, but also to do what his word and his truth says. There are many around us who would say that they are Christian but do not follow after this truth. Just like these ones here that he speaks to are sure of their conviction, they're sure of what they know, they're sure of what they've been taught, but they don't know the truth. It is up to us to make sure that we are ones who live by the truth of God. That we are ones that let God's truth speak to us, that we are ones that take God's truth and we take them and we live by them. That we believe Christ in his truth. That we believe that truly that he is the one that can set us free. And he continues in verse 46, he says, which one of you convicts me of sin? If I tell the truth, why do you not believe? Whoever is of God hears the words of God. The reason why you do not hear them is that you are not of God. When we believe and when we truly come to Christ, when we believe, when we truly come to God, and we see him for who he is and what he has done, we hear these words and we hear the truth of Jesus, and our heart rejoices in the truth. But if we long more for the world, if we long more for the desires of our heart, if we long more for the desires of whatever is put before us, instead of seeing the truth that is Christ and the freedom that is in him, if we long more for those other things, like he says here, we are not of God. But when we do come, when we do hear the truth, when we do live the truth of Christ, we are with the Father. Freedom on our own does not come. Freedom to worship, freedom to assemble, freedom for these different things that we've been guaranteed in our country does come. But true freedom, freedom from sin, freedom from death, there is only one way for that to come. And that is through Jesus Christ. That is through the cross, and that is through his sacrifice. The one that was here before all things began, the one that will continue to be. That was willing to come here as man, willing to go to the cross, willing to shed his blood, willing to give his life. That is our one way to true freedom. We are blessed to live in a place that gives us freedoms. But those of us who have come to Christ, those of us who have come to know him and to follow his truth, have a freedom that is even greater, and have a freedom that is eternal, and a freedom that no one. And so as we are reminded of this, we will come now to communion together. We will come as ones who the Son has set free, ones who look to know God, and ones who look to be reminded of him. And so if you take your cup, and if you haven't got one, you can grab one now. I know this is a little bit different, and this is one of those things that may continue to look like this for a little while. but it does not make the truth of what we are about to say, the truth of what we are about to do, any different. We are reminded by Paul in 1 Corinthians 11, he's teaching the Corinthians about the Lord's Supper and about remembering and about recognizing Christ as who he was. And he says, "For I received from the Lord what I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus on the night that he was betrayed took bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and he gave it to his disciples, saying, 'This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me.'" So we too take our bread and we remember what Christ has done. We remember that he gave his body willingly for us, that he was willing to go to the cross, that he was willing to face the beating, that he was willing to face the nailing upon the cross, that he was willing to face even death upon the cross for us. So as we eat, let us eat in remembrance. And two, we are reminded that he also took the cup. He took the cup and he said that this cup is the new covenant in my blood. He says, "Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." And he says that this cup is this new covenant. No longer are you stuck to the sacrificial system. No longer are you stuck to the way that it was. But he says, this cup is a new covenant in my blood, that through me, this final sacrifice that I am, you will have freedom. And so as we take this cup, before we drink the cup, let us say, Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this day. We thank you for this chance to come to the Lord's Supper, to come to the bread and to the cup. And God, as we have had the bread and as we're reminded that Christ was willing to give his body, that he's willing to give his life. God, we come now to the cup and we're reminded of the shedding of his blood, the covering of sin, the removal of the old system and the new covenant that we have now in him that gives us freedom. That gives us freedom from sin and from death. It gives us eternal life. And that is what we celebrate here today with this bread and with this cup. We celebrate and we remember the freedom that Christ has given. God, as we come to this cup, again, let our hearts be drawn to you. God, we love you and we love you so much. In Jesus' name. Again, he took that cup and he said, "This is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance." And Paul reminds us here, he says, "For as often as we eat this bread and drink the cup, we proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." So as we close our time together, we're going to stand and we're going to sing one closing song together, "He is Lord." We're going to lift it up with just our voices and we'll sing "He is Lord," being reminded again that Christ is the one that sets us free, that Christ is the one that has given us this freedom, and that he is the one that we turn to. So let us stand together and sing, "He is Lord." He is Lord, he is Lord, he is risen from the dead, and he is Lord. Every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we again thank you for this opportunity to come to your house. God, we look forward to gathering together as a whole group in these coming weeks. God, we pray that you would lead us and direct us and guide us each day. God, we are thankful for the freedoms that we have here in this nation. God, we are so thankful for the freedom that we have received. The freedom from sin, the freedom from death. The freedom to have eternal life. God, let us be ones that hear and believe in Christ, the living word. Let us be ones that see the truth and do the truth that is in the written word that we have received. God, as we go from this place, let us be ones that are showing your love and your light. And let us be ones that are daily reminded